So you're walking along the trail and you say, I wonder what that mushroom is doing here. It's probably thinking the same thing about you. Oh my God, a human. It's a pretty profound statement, isn't it? Funny how things come full circle. The world's not what it used to be. It's not how it started. It's always being recycled. It's always in a constant state of changing. We've been through a pretty drastic change in the last 200 years. Right? There's evidence, there's scars, there's the colonization of land. There's mycelium paving the way. Mushroom mycelium is a network of cells, collectively, that produced heat, carbon dioxide, and they sweat. What else does that? Humans. I'm going to give you a disclaimer right now. Good luck sleeping tonight, okay? Because I can't sleep anymore. So you see the tips of those cells, those are called infantry cells. So mushroom mycelium, they produce heat, they carbon dioxide, they exhale carbon dioxide, and they sweat. I'll go a little bit further. They like to colonize land masses. They like, they're very territorial. They're very opportunistic. And then they like to mine their resources. What else does that? Yeah. They drill their way through their environment, which is interesting. I want to give a new perspective on, like, shrink yourself down. Think like a mushroom for a minute. Maybe for the rest of your life. That these fungi, those hot tips, any of you have ever tried to drill into masonry? Right? You ever use a wet drill to cut tile? All right? They lubricate their way. They sweat and they drill their way through the mulch. They drill their way through the wood. When you see a mushroom growing on a tree or a log, that's what it did. It basically had to lubricate its way through there, and it unlocks the substrate that it eats. It pulls the nutrition right through its tissue. All right? Our stomachs are on the inside. Fungi digest on the outside of their cells. Right? Lichenized fungi, very interesting. Estimated over 60% of the world's surface is covered by lichens. That's a huge amount. Covered, right? These are largely remote, rocky areas. Surface area now goes up to. A lichen is a component of algae or cyanobacteria in algae, and fungi is the dominant component. It is the rooting structure, the mechanism. So they name lichens based on the fungus that is in it. These are composite organisms. That's what they call them. It's a matrix. All right? You separate them. It's very difficult for things to put them back together. We lose a lot in that translation. But lichens are beautiful. All right, these are little cup fungi. Have any of you know what a morel is? No idea. Morel. Who hunts morels? Where are your favorite spots? Don't you see now? There's a reason mushroom hunters carry knives. It's not just for picking mushrooms. All right. It's one of those things. Mushroom people are, I think, by far some of the most friendly, earth-friendly, tree-carrying, hugging, modern hippies that I've ever been around, except during morel season. There's 2 or 3 weeks where your best friend, a complete liar, complete. Where'd you find them? Over there. Well, why are you going that way? Just saying. The world looked a lot different. Estimated that these prototaxides over 400 million years ago were over 20 feet tall. 20-foot tall mushrooms. If you find one, please call me. That would be pretty cool. Now, by scale, I did this to scale. 20 feet tall. It was the dominant vertical structure on the planet. The tallest plant at the moment, no trees, was only 3 feet tall. Does that put things into perspective? The plants were this big, the tallest plants. And these were 20 feet tall. All right, this is what they look like fossilized. So they are and have been found. Mushrooms don't, either that's a really big mushroom or a really small man. But what I like to do is study interkingdom interactions because it's not all one kingdom. All right, we, as scientists, we've put this into a very flat, two-dimensional, kind of a dead-end street format. That's not the way it's designed. These are all three-dimensional and they're bending towards each other. In fact, I have a 3-year-old, Heidi, and I just got, have you ever seen those virtual reality headsets? Have you ever seen those? Have you ever tried those on? I gave it to my 3-year-old. Somebody says, don't do it. Don't do it. So I downloaded this little app, and it's like rabbits that come from outer space. And the rabbits are running around, and my 3-year-old puts that around, and she's like, there's rabbits everywhere! I'm like, hold on, don't let her hit the wall. But I was talking to my interns, and I think this year, the reason I got those too was because I'm interested in creating a three-dimensional model of this, like molecules sit, and see how close things are related and how they touch. And imagine if we as scientists can put those on and almost walk through and get close to these dead ends and see that, look at animals and fungi are close together, but sometimes fungi need some bacteria to fruit too. You know, they overlap. They're composite. They need each other. There's no way this is a real model at all, right? Some good dance music leading into this. Interesting concept, isn't it? That these plants at Yellowstone, these geothermal vents here, those plants are sitting right at the water's edge. That water is 155 degrees Fahrenheit. How is that possible? Do your tomatoes grow at 155 degrees? Do you want them to grow? No. Would you like it if your tomato was that heat tolerant?
Yes.
He just says answer everybody. Yes. That'd be nice. So what they did was they found a fungus, an endophyte, living inside of the leaves. A fungus that's inside of the leaves and roots of this plant. So they separated them out, just like a good scientist does. And then they put them back together. They purified. Put them in 155 degree water, waiting for the reaction, and all the plants died. Isn't that a puzzle? Right? So there was a virologist sitting in the room that said, let's look deeper into nature. Let's look at the fungus. They found a virus living inside of the fungus that was living inside of the plant. When they put the three back together, all the plants survived up to 155, 160 degrees. A beneficial virus, right? That's what's going on here. It's just a multitude of layers, right, of organisms on this planet. It's interesting. That's why I say if you keep looking deeper, we're only limited now to our instruments, really, and to our intuition. I like that. Intuition, that's a good word. You know, creativity is more important than knowledge. That's another Albert Einstein quote. I like that. I like that good ideas come from someone who has fun. I like my ad in the newspaper. Did you see that? Yeah. There's a fun guy talking about fungi. And while we're there, I'm just going to get another mushroom joke out of the way. Did you hear about the algae who fell in love with the fungus? No. They took a liking to each other. Oh. You can clap. You can clap. It's not over yet. Now their love is on the rocks. Write it down. You're going to reuse that one. But that's... Endophytes are fascinating to me now, and I feel like I've been blind for 25 years. I've been collecting mushrooms that I can see. There's a lot more going on out there. You're walking in, these inkberries, the echinacea, the grasses. If you go outside with a hole puncher, now I have like a hole puncher, you know, that I carry around like a holster, like a Western, you know. And I hole punch things, and then I surface sterilize them in alcohol, ethanol, just keep drenching them. And I try to clean the outside of it. And then I put it on a Petri plate, and it just blossoms with fungi living inside the plant. Right? There's an estimated, now, a year ago, there was an estimated 1.5 million fungi on the planet. Right? Only 150,000 have been collected or identified. This year, they just announced new research because they're finding more of these. It now went up to an estimated 5 million. There will be no shortage of things to do, right? Forever. And now, if I had some form of fungal ADD, it's definitely over for me. You have fungi, rusts. You all know the cedar apple. I've passed a lot of apples up here. We don't have apples really near Clemson. I've been asked to take the sweatshirt off at many lectures, by the way. Do you really have to wear that? Cedar apple rusts. These are host jumpers, if you didn't know. Have you ever seen these on cedar trees? Right? They look like little koosh balls, you know. They jump from apples to the juniper, right? The cedar, red cedar, and then they jump back. They can't go from cedar to cedar to cedar. They can't go from apple to apple to apple. They have to go back and forth. They have to find a host. These are called rust fungi. And some, if you see blackberry out here and it's fully orange, or on pine trees, it's typically orange, okay? It's typically orange. They have to host jump before they go back to their hosts. They can have as many as 5 different plant hosts, completely different species too. All right, so whenever you see those, just respect them. They're considered pathogens. Apple tree growers, if they want to minimize the damage to their apple trees, guess what they get rid of? Cut down all the cedars. Perimeter of no cedars. That's pretty standard if you talk to an apple grower. All right. What is this? Did anybody ever grow this on your corn? Maybe your silver queen? And you threw it out, thinking it was some kind of alien invasion? That is corn smut. Those are inflated kernels full of a fungus. It behaves like a yeast, and it gets into the corn and it inflates it. That is a corn kernel. That's fully inflated. And it actually tastes pretty good. It tastes like a mixture between mushrooms and corn. It's very high in lysine. So let's just describe what happened. This yeast got inside the corn kernel and it fermented it, and it made more protein and more lysine than the corn itself. This little kernel is worth more than the whole ear. That's corn smut. All right, and I grow this intentionally. We inject corn ears to get this, and this is called huitlacoche in Mexico. It's a delicacy. You can search it online. Call them corn smut. Okay, corn smut. Be careful what you search on the internet. All right? Because don't just type in smut is what I'm. Because corn won't come up first. Yep. How do you eat it? It has a very soft, this is kind of firm. We generally just saute it, and then it takes like a guacamole-like consistency. And you could smear it onto tortillas and cook it with onions. I really like it. It's actually pretty good. You might call it an acquired taste. And an acquired texture. You ever see those? But I spend a lot of time in the woods. Not as much as I used to, because I do a lot of research now, and our business is growing, so I'm always trying to do the business thing, attorney stuff, but I'm never happier, like I was yesterday, to take one morning off to go out and find a whole bunch of baskets full of mushrooms. All right, because now starts the busy season. We've had all this rain. Okay, mushrooms are 92% water. It's a limiting factor in producing a fruiting body. They're always there. All right, you're walking over them. All right, they're hiding in the mulch. They're attached to the tree roots. These are called mycorrhizae. These are fungi that are symbiotic with the roots of trees. They're soulmates for life. All right, when that acorn germinates and it's in the soil, it's trying to pick up a partner, right? A fungal partner. And it's almost like it's a composite. All of our plants are composites. They have a fungal organism on their roots. All right. That's a very small chanterelle, pink chanterelle. And this one is not so small. All right, looks like a concrete statue down at the garden center. But that is a real mushroom. And you really could sit on it. That mushroom was 55 pounds. And it sat there like this for 2 months. How long do most mushrooms last that you see in your yard? A couple hours? A couple days? 2 months. And this one, I couldn't cut it with a bread knife. It was really thick, like shark skin. It was prehistoric. It was odd. This one was found in Savannah, Georgia, down near Hilton Head. It's a tropical. This is a small one.
What?
In Costa Rica, they get about this tall and about 4 to 5 feet in diameter. Literally, if it was raining, you could just go, oh, okay. I'll just wait it out. You know, or just pick it up and walk around with it while I do that. So we clone things like this. We culture. In our lab, we can culture things. And this one was shipped to me by UPS. And I've got an interesting relationship with my UPS guy. He's, more times than not, people send me mushrooms not properly prepared for shipping. All right? They dump them into a box or they put them in a Ziploc bag and they just pretty much melt. Right? Or the worms come out and they just turn into a big bag of maggots, my favorite. And then they call. They're like, did you get my mushrooms? I was like, no, I didn't get them. But I got a big bag of maggots. So if you're interested in finding something, if you email us, take a picture and say, hey, is this worth anything to us as a civilization? That's what my company does. All right? Dry it gently and send it, and it will survive. Because my UPS guy is probably tired of walking up to my building like this. And it's dripping. And then you know what? Most UPS guys drop it off and leave. He sits there and waits to see what's in there. It's like, I am not leaving because that thing's sneaking up my van. I'm going to find out. These are cool. This is called Macroscope titans. What a good species name, Macroscope titans. We won't find it up here unless our warming trend continues. One was found in Athens, Georgia now, so they're kind of creeping this way with our mild winters. But yeah, you really could sit on it. It would hold your weight, right? If you need a garden stool or want to plant these in a circle around your fire pit, that's what I'm doing. It is edible. It's an edible tropical mushroom. Look at that. It's huge. And I guess respect is one of the reasons I'm here, and I'm glad for the introduction, is to say, what is going on? Those little mushrooms that you pass by during the day, every little fungus matters. Get some attention, give it some respect. Even those little tiny little ones, these are like a couple millimeters tall, and they're growing on these little needles, like these little pine needles, okay? They're doing their job. Mushrooms are classified as decomposers, right? Fungi. They make soil. That's what they do. But sometimes they're a little different at night. Right? Bioluminescence exists in the fungal kingdom more than any other. Right? They share a common trait with some insects. This is a luciferase reaction. It's a phosphorylation reaction that occurs in bacteria too. Right? Benthic fish have it. Have you seen the fish that glow in the dark? Those are bacteria that live in the pits of the fish. What is going on? Right? Where did this come from? Why do they need it? Why do they need to glow in the dark? What about our orchids? it is almost undebatable that all terrestrial orchids in North America rely on fungi to open up their seeds, or they won't exist. Orchids, terrestrial orchids, lack the nutrition to open up their own seed. So a fungus, like a little oyster knife, it's a little spring-loaded oyster knife, it's a coil and it pries open the seed for the orchid, opens it up and lets it out. All right. Then the fungus and the orchid plant live below ground, no leaves for photosynthesis. So the fungus feeds and nurtures the plant underground with no leaves. And then the orchid comes up above ground and with its solar panels and absorbs some light energy, starts making its own food, and then it turns around and it kills the fungus. Uh-oh, bad roommate. All right, that fungus is also responsible for a decline in pines. It's Rhizoctonia, so it is a fungus that also kills pine trees. It's a root rot pathogen of pine trees. So if you see an orchid like this in the woods, and I do this all the time, I freak people out. We say, oh, we found an orchid. Hey, there must be a dead pine tree right behind me. And they're like, how did you know? It has to be there. You see? It really has to be there. All right. I think observation is an important trait that's being lost. You might agree, right? Put the cell phones down and take a nice walk through the woods and observe. Just watch stuff. They can tell a story without talking, believe me. Mushrooms talk to me all the time and I don't smoke anything. No. See, these are the fungi that associate with trees. There's over 4,000 to 5,000 species of mushrooms that you can see in North America that rely on trees. All right? The trees are photosynthesizing, right? Making food. Those sugars come down and they sweat into the roots. So tree roots sweat too. All right? As much as 60% of their food is sweat into the roots to feed bacteria and fungi. That's a huge part. Imagine giving away 60% of your paycheck. It must be for something good. We already do? Okay, sorry. It must be for something good. The fungi are out there mining nutrients. Do you remember those cells? They're drilling into the soil. They're absorbing nitrogen and phosphate, and then they bring it over and they trade it to the plant. It's like Wall Street down there. They need sugars. They need nitrogen. So they're trading. They're carbon trading down there. So whenever you see a mushroom that's mycorrhizae, like a chanterelle, or partly mycorrhizal, like a morel, understand that there's something going on between the trees and the mushrooms. Right? It's been going on for a long time, and mycorrhizae have not changed in 400 million years. They're doing something right. Why bother? It works. And what is this? What kingdom does it belong to? Kingdom, plant. So does it make its own food? No. It totally lacks chlorophyll. No, where does it get its food? At Wendy's?
I'm sorry, what did you say? I couldn't understand.
This is an Indian pipe, so this is a plant that lacks chlorophyll. It does not make its food. So where does it get it?
Trees.
Take a wild guess.
Trees.
It starts with the trees. Trees make sugars. They feed the fungus. This plant taps in to the fungus that's associated with the trees. It's getting free cable. All right? It's a cheater. Yeah. But when you take away the fungi from the tree, now you see how important those are? Right? Our forestry division did. It took 60 to 80 years to grow a pine tree before we could harvest for paper. They figured out if we add a fungus to the roots, we can do it in 20. Same tree, same size. All right. That helps with disease resistance. Look at all this surface area. Also, it's out mining water and collecting water and holding the soil together. If you dump water on here, it would erode away. Erosion is a killer of our topsoil, isn't it? If you dump water on here, it's a network. It's like glue. It's going to hold it there for the plant. That's another reason fungi are in the soil, right? To prevent erosion. And fungi are everywhere. I was just on this granitic outcrop a couple days ago with a guy from Canada. This guy right here, Robert Rogers. He's an expert in medicinal mushrooms. And I said, you got to see this ecosystem we have up here. It's weird. All right? These are all sedums. Those are all tiny little sedum succulent plants blooming. And I caught them just a few days ago. They were blooming. That's Dr. Porcher from the Citadel. Are there fungi up here?
Probably.
Yeah, absolutely. They are. They're growing on the roots of these sedums, on the mosses, on these little windswept trees and pines. They're everywhere. All right. There are mushrooms that are beautiful and edible. This is a black trumpet mushroom. All right. We sell these for about $40 to $60 a pound. Right? They smell like apricots. Look how dark that is. See the beech tree? They grow in association with our beech trees. I would dare say if you took away and surface sterilized the beech trees, they wouldn't exist. They couldn't live. They need these mushrooms, right? They blend in very well. You see that if you're walking along? So I generally am terrible at finding these, and most people are. But what you will find is that you would smell them before you see them. Because you crush them, and all of a sudden you smell fruit in the middle of the woods. Apricots. And you're like, I smell something. And you look back and you've crushed a few. And then you tune in, and they're everywhere. All right? These are chanterelles. Olga and I and Heidi went out yesterday, and we picked about 15 pounds of these right around our house. 15 pounds.
Where do you live?
Like the scarecrow, right?
Best way to clean them.
Just give them to me and I'll charge you a commission. We just brush them lightly, and you can even rinse them off and then let them air dry a little bit. You don't want to wash them and put them in the fridge. They'll turn to mush very quickly. But there's nothing wrong with rinsing them, okay? I just use a little brush and brush them off. These smell like apricots too, and they grow in association with oak trees on the East Coast and conifers on the West. But these are at the market right now in Greenville and Travelers Rest, and right now they're about $30 to $40 a pound at the market. So just a couple, maybe 2 hours in the woods was enough to probably take in about $300. $300, yeah. Beautiful mushrooms. They fork here. I am teaching a mushroom ID class at the extension office here for North Carolina Extension Office in June. If you're interested in hunting for money, you have to take that class because it's a safety class. We don't want anyone just picking mushrooms and say, yeah, I think that's a chanterelle, and it ending up in the soup at a restaurant. They're easy to ID, and other bugs like them too, just hiding in the cracks and What a beautiful architecture, isn't it? How many of you take pictures of plants? Well, here's your homework.
Take a picture.
Take pictures of those mushrooms too. Lay them down on their sides. Look at those gills. Look at these patterns of things. Some have teeth and little teeth, and some have pores, and some have gills. Some don't have anything. All right, and the pink chanterelle is another one. This one also grows in association with beech trees and oaks. It's just like a little flower, right? Beautiful flowers. Don't you think this can be worn to the prom? Am I the only one? Am I the only one? I'm here for your daughter. I would be shocked if somebody did Heidi in high school. But that's why these little mushrooms are so cool and so important. That they are mycorrhizal. They associate with the trees associate with them. They need each other. You take away the trees, you're talking about saving those mountaintops. That's why it's so important. You'll see why. We need them. Eating mushrooms or not, if you're not a fan of eating mushrooms, you may eat mushrooms and not even know it. All right. Yes?
Do you have an opinion about hardwood dieback as we're seeing it today?
Dieback from Phytophthora?
Pardon?
What, from dieback from disease?
Yeah, I've seen, over my lifetime, I've seen a tremendous amount, observed a tremendous, both up and down the East Coast, of hardwood dieback. For example, red oak has been majorly impacted in our immediate area. And homesteads or farm places where there's major impact on the soil structure, tremendous amount of ant activity breaking down the trees that are dying. In fact, many people consider that a major issue and wonder about it. Do you have an opinion?
Oh, I have an opinion. There's a lot of factors that go into, it's like a domino effect. You have, look at what's happened in the last 150 years, industrialization, colonization, the balance is off. We've got introduced species, we've got bacteria and protozoans like Phytophthora that once they get in, there's a lot of pressure on these plants. Things aren't the same as they were 200 years ago. Maybe also the plants can't defend themselves properly too. I mean, they may be losing their defenses. They're losing the biodiversity. And when you start losing biodiversity, let's say there's some rare plants on that mountain you want to save, just a couple that have never been found before. If you take those away, then there's a chain reaction. And that's why I say you don't have to go to space or look to space to see a black hole. All right? This is Swiss cheese now. The web of life is unraveling. All right? It's the mushroom's job to fix that. They've fixed it before. Let's let them do it. All right? I'll show you a couple of things that we're working on that I'm very proud of. Lobster mushrooms. This is a composite organism. This is a fungus. This is a guild mushroom that grows on the hemlock, roots of the hemlock. And then another fungus attacks that, turns it orange. And the first mushroom was not edible. And now this one is a desired edible, $40 a pound, lobster mushroom. You can make a lobster bisque with this. All right? That's even better than using real lobster. Right? Taste test at a James Beard competition, this one won. It's really good, and it's in your area. I don't get these around my area. I'm in the flat. I'm a flatlander, right? Is that what they call them? Oh, are your morels this big? I found this at the Savannah River site. No, I'm just kidding. And this one glows in the dark too. No. Yeah, giant morels, they can happen. This is an ash morel. They're huge. And we found a bunch of these this year around one tree. Get this. One tree, I was called on the phone. I thought it was a prank call. It was a volunteer fireman. He says, yeah, I'm from Ohio. I just moved down here. I think I found morels, but they're too big. And then he says, the craziest thing I've ever heard. Can I show you where they are? Then I was just, no way. Who is this? Who is this? And sure enough, Olga and I go to this tree, and he comes upon this tree, and he picked some for himself. 160 this size on one tree. That's what we picked that day. He had already picked about 60 of them. So 220 around one tree that was starting to die. And then it was like the last gasp, right? So but the year after that, it's just the yields crashed and there's hardly any around there. So it's a succession, it's a period of time. You have a question?
What happens if the tree was okay and you had all these and you took them off?
Yep.
I mean, if you cleaned all of them out that were up there, would that hurt the whole colony?
Nope, they've actually shown that it helps them. Because a mushroom is a defense mechanism. Its job is to produce spores. And if you harvest all those out, it's sentient. It kind of knows that it didn't complete its job. So what does it do? Boom, it produces a lot more. So actually picking can increase harvest. All right, and there's enough of these morels in the woods that you don't find. You know what I mean? These are camouflage. That's why I'm wearing camouflage too. So Sneak up. Gotcha. Otherwise, they'll go right back in.
Next year, because the nutrients have been depleted, kind of like the classic mushroom ring, as they eat their way out.
Yeah.
Is that why?
Well, and they get their food source partly from that tree. That's the part mycorrhizal relationship. A morel is very complex. We're doing some studies this year for trying to grow them indoors. It's one of my last, before I go out, kind of a bucket list things. Can I do it? I believe we can. Morels are predatory on bacteria too. They actually stun and kill bacteria in the soil. It's very interesting. The ash morel around ash trees. Up here in this area, you'll find black morels, a little bit smaller, around giant tulip poplar trees. Big granddaddies, so go out looking for those in the spring. All right, that's the best. See, they glow, or they actually glow, but they're hollow. So when the sunlight hits them, you can see a really pretty, very interesting texture. That's a cup fungus. All those are individual little cups all over the cap, and it's completely hollow. They're really good. A lot of chefs stuff these, and they're really delicious. We take like this cheese mixture and meat and mix it in and squirt it inside the stem with a pastry bag, and it fills the cavity. And then we'll drop it in like some breadcrumbs, egg, and fry it, and it cooks everything on the inside. And then you dip it in spicy mayonnaise. Remind me to bring samples next time. Damn. Because there is a kitchen, we could cook them up. It just gets crazier and crazier. That was the alarm for this slide. It said, wake up. Mycopesticides. Those are extremely interesting. Myco meaning fungus, pesticide, we know what that is. Pesticides are classified by the EPA as a plant, fungus, bacteria, you name it. It's anything that you want to get rid of. All of these are fungi that they're entomopathogenic, meaning entomo, insect, pathogenic. They target the insects. All right, this is some disturbing information for the insects. All right, there's different types of pests. Insects, I said structural disease, microbial disease, even parasites for things like rodents. I couldn't think of any, so I just put that in there. These are ants that we found behind our house. And you might have them in your area. In fact, I've got one right here, all right, that I brought. I don't know if you can even see that. Y'all see this little structure?
Yeah.
Right? It is a tiny, this is how big they are. Look at that. See that? That's what I've trained my eyes on now. I've kind of zoned out on people, I have to admit. Fungi are interesting, and that's that. Let's turn it this way. That's essentially what that is. Upside down. That's how they fruit. They don't fruit. Most mushrooms fruit against gravity and go up. All right. This is a fungus that is attacked this ant, and I'll tell you a little story. The backstory is that these ants are crawling around trying to find food to bring food back where?
To the ant hole.
To the nest or the hive, right? The nest. And who's in charge of that nest? The queen. All right. Who's protecting the queen? All right. Well, there's some guards there too. All right. There's some guards. You've been to the airport lately? The guards are like the TSA. They have special equipment, which is their antennae. They're the only ones in that social order that can detect the spores that attack their little tribe, okay? They have special antennae that can detect, it's like a mold. So the workers are coming back with food and they're scanning them, all right? They're scanning, touching every single one that comes in. They're patting down. Boop, it goes off. The guard takes this worker, which has spores sticking on it, okay? And drags it far away from the nest, all right? And chops its head off and digs a hole and stuffs the ant into the hole in a graveyard. Yeah, that's what happens when you try to run through TSA. It's not over. The guard, knowing that he touched the infected worker like an Ebola patient, digs another hole, jumps in, and entombs themselves. All right? All right? And then a series of guards are taken out, like the Secret Service, and then sooner or later, spores come right into the queen. She has no idea. And what happens is the spores are very specific to these ants. We have a lot of species of ants here. Insect kingdom is huge. It's the biggest one on the planet. The spores recognize the insect species, which is crazy. And then if it doesn't recognize, if it's not compatible, it'll just sit on that ant. It can go back and forth to the queen. It doesn't matter. It doesn't hurt those. But if it matches up, it'll melt a hole in the armor while it's still walking around. And then it'll drill in and release spores, and it'll get into the brain of the insect. All right? All of a sudden, the ant loses control of its muscles and its ability to steer itself around. The fungus takes over like a self-driving car and drives the ant around the woods, doing what it's told. Kind of sounds like the American dream. And then the ants, these particular ants, climb up a branch, and they go up and down, left and right. They're trying to find a Goldilocks zone with right humidity, too much, too little. Why would it go left and right? It bites into, this is the crazy part, if you haven't gotten crazy enough. Now the ant is instructed to bite on the bud scar or a leaf onto a leaf vein. It instructs it to bite onto it. And then the fungus comes down, it melts the jaw muscles and gives it lockjaw. And so it's hanging upside down, biting into a twig, not knowing what's going on. Well, it's probably figured out something's wrong by now, right? This has only happened to me twice. All right? And then it secretes a toxin and it kills the ant, and then that thread comes out the back of its head and points straight down. And the craziest part, if that wasn't bad enough, was that a researcher came down from Harvard, tied strings to these, and put little weights on them in the woods. This is a South Carolina Cordyceps. And they lined up perfectly with the pheromone-laden highway that the rest of the ants were using. It's like putting a dirty bomb right over I-26. Good luck sleeping tonight. I told you. I told you. It's the first thing. This is what happens when you don't clean your room. I've had parents at children's programs in the back go, "Thank you." So I drew up this really nice life cycle. It didn't exist. I read it in the literature, so I just illustrated it. And it shows that, yeah, it's got a natural life cycle. The spores, it exists as a mold. And then if the right host is present, it jumps track. You see that figure 8? It can exist by eating bacteria or leaves. And then if the host is present, it jumps track. And then it mummifies, steers them around, and then out comes the mushroom. Typically out of the head. All right, it's got a sense of humor, I guess. So let's look at a few of these. These are cool. And these are actually everywhere. And I bet you if you crawl around your garden a little bit, you're going to find them. They're here. They're watching you. All right. Cordyceps experts would estimate that there are as many cordyceps as there are insects. It's a balancing act. Kingdom fungi and insects they are trying to battle it out. All right, they're battling it out. These are leafhoppers, beetles. Look at this. If you see something mummified in your garden or on a branch, turn it in, right? Pick it.
Is there a fungus for stink bugs?
Yeah, one was actually turned in Virginia this past year. I'm trying to get my hands on it. There being
Please, now.
we found one for spiders. This one was on the back of my one of my water oak leaves. Not that we don't need to be attacking spiders, but they're there, right? I culture these and keep them in my lab. I don't weaponize these in any way. There's no reason to, right? Whoa, what about some moths, right? Can you think of a few moths that are problematic? Maybe for some trees? Moths, biting insects that vector diseases? Sure. You take down trees that are dead or have been hit by lightning. And those are trees that are soft, and woodpeckers and little owls live in those. What are those called? What kind of trees are those called? Snags. You leave them there, right? Those birds are flying around like forest guardians, and they're picking off the insects that are harming the trees and spreading disease, right? So you leave those. And you know what, in fact? Do it intentionally. If you have trees and you don't have any snags, just girdle one tree in your woods and create a snag. Invite a woodpecker or a little owl to live in your woods, right? Aphids, these were turned in by Todd Elliott. You all know Doug Elliott? I saw his book over there. Good friend of ours. He's been turning everything into our lab that he finds. He's amazing. These are little aphids that are fully mummified. See how they're biting on the vein? Isn't that interesting? Very interesting how that fungus steers them around. Something to think about. This is a very rare one. This one's, look at the back legs. So it's instructed, it's bit into the venation of the leaf, and then the back legs went up vertical, like some strange rigor mortis, right? And then 2 mushrooms pop out the back of its brain, and then it bleached the ant's eyes white. Ladies and gentlemen, if you need a Halloween costume, it's right there. So why are these so important? Why do I show these pictures? Not that they're cool and scary at the same time, is because as a community, if we're looking for more, there's solutions. All right, so I gave this slideshow to the Kentucky Arborist Association 2 years in a row. I think they just needed a break from, like, you know, pest management and stuff, and these were, give everybody a lighter slideshow, you know, a little bit of humor. And I said, what kind of problems do you have with insects in your industry? And they said, these longhorn beetles, they're terrible, right? These Asian longhorn beetles. And then this little guy. Does anybody know what this is?
A cricket.
It's an emerald ash borer. Cute little guy, devastating. All right, they bore into trees, they lay their eggs, and the larvae just kind of tunnel around and make these big, nasty patterns. All right, so last year, I said to the Arborist Association, I said, I'm not cutting dead ash trees. That's not my job. You are. It was the industry. So if someone who's cutting branches and dead ash trees, do you think they have a better likelihood of finding something that's infected? Absolutely. And it only took 2 years for someone to find a mummified, fully infected emerald ash borer larvae. Talk about solving the problem as a community, all right? Olga is very good at finding Cordyceps. She's called the Cordyceps queen, in fact. She's walking behind her house and she sees a scale insect. You know what a scale insect is? Looks like a little barnacle, right? And it's a sucker. It sucks out the juices out of the tree. But this was really flat, and she goes, you know, that looks a little strange. And then it had just these little bumps. And I put this stick in a humidity jar with a wet paper towel, and in 7 days, these antlers came out. It grew out of it. So if you find something that looks unusual, you know, dry it or put it in a humidity jar and watch it. We might need these. You know, these are rare, but they're everywhere. You know, I would like it if everyone can look for them, because there could be a solution here. These can replace chemical pesticides. That's kind of where I'm getting. Is that what you want? Unless you own stock and shares in chemical companies, right? I'm not your fan. Not the one. All right, so this fungus we've cultured, see how it turns back into a mold? Now this can be just sprayed. You can put this in a spray bottle and just spray it right onto scale, and it'll drill and mummify the scale, and it won't hurt anything else. Isn't that crazy? You could spray it in your mouth like a mouthwash. It doesn't hurt anything. Chemical pesticides don't do that. They don't do that. You know, here's my spiders. Not a way I want to go out. That is a cicada nymph. Cicada, it was one of the first cordyceps I ever found. I found it growing on a mossy log. Look at my finger, see how small it is. And this is the only part that was exposed right here. So all this was inside a mossy log. So if you see a little thread of structure with little bumps on it, dig down very carefully and see if you can get this host. All right. How about bees? How many people have bees? How many people are having troubles with bees? Probably the same hand, so you can just keep your hand up, right? Luckily, these varroa mites, there's, the USDA did a study several years ago down at Texas A&M where they found a fungus that attacks the varroa mites that meal feed on bees. The mites also are capable, since they're meal feeding, of injecting viruses that have an association with the colony collapse disorder. Our bees need all the help they can get. All right, so they're finding that a more target-specific fungus that only attacks the mite, because if you're having a mite problem and what's currently available are all these toxic pesticides to kill the mites, well, it kills the bees too. All right, so this is another solution coming out of the fungal kingdom. It's a big one, isn't it? So I hunt mushrooms all the time, and this was my absolute first cordyceps I ever found. I saw this growing out of a rotting pine log, right? And I was taking a picture of another mushroom growing on a log. It was a big one, and my camera was right sitting on the log, and right next to my hand, a couple inches away, I see this little thread. I'm like, what is that? So I take out my knife, and it's coming out of a little hole, and I pry it open, and look what I find. Just a beautiful, and you know, I wasn't an entomologist. I'm becoming more of one because I keep finding insects. I thought it was a hornet. It was so big. That thing was like 2 inches long. It was huge. I just thought it lost its wings. I didn't know what it was. So I took it to Clemson. I said, oh, no, that's a black carpenter ant. Okay? And I took it, I sent it to Harvard, where that guy, the expert is up there, David Hughes. He travels the world collecting these, and he goes, where did you find this? This hasn't been seen since 1907. You know? We haven't seen this fungus and this ant together since 1907 in the herbarium or the literature, right? So no known living copy of this fungus existed until I found it. So he's like, where did you find it? I'm not going to tell you. Are you crazy? I just met you. So we cultured it. This was a queen. He said, well, the reason I'm telling you this is because it's a queen. She's next in line to take over her own nest, to start a whole nother civilization. All right. These queens, there are queens, species of ants in South America, the leafcutter ants. You ever seen those? There's some in North Carolina, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have what's called a ferrobuccal pouch. It's a depression. Everybody touch this. See, feel that little hole right there? Push on that. Don't push too hard. They have a special design pouch, only the queen, a little hole there where before she leaves, they're farming fungus down there on the leaves. They're mushroom farmers, and they're eating that. It has natural antibiotics and protein. Before she leaves to start her own little colony, she carves out a perfect little pellet with her mandibles that fits perfectly in here, and she leaves to start a whole new civilization with that one little starter culture. Like a friendship bread. You seen that? Yeah? One little pellet, like an ember, to start a big fire of this fungus. All right? But this particular one, I took a dental pick and I see it like pulled some of this tissue out. It's like cotton candy. and put it on a plate, and it grew out. So that's what I do in my lab. And it does different things. It turns back into a mold because it doesn't have a host anymore. But I kept chasing this little cloud that I kept seeing. Looked like a rainstorm on the horizon. So look at that, those little spore packets everywhere. So I kept chasing this one, and then I purified it. All right, and you see how I took the tips? That's where I cut it from, and I make new ones. And so now this is a pure copy, a pure culture of that ant that I found. We can do this with every insect we find, right? And then I pitched the idea to Olga to make fire ant farms in our house. She shut that down in about 3 nanoseconds. I don't think so. This was not fire ants. This was just a stock image of how NASA was growing ants in space because they wanted to see the effect on, microgravity and lack of gravity and tunneling and all their behavior. So I copied that. I made gel so I could watch them, and I added a bunch of fire ants to my fire ant farms, right? Before this, I captured some black carpenter ants, reinfected them with the fungus, so I knew it was the pathogen, right? Postulate. I knew that it was infected, so I infected this particular one. Look how it's coming out of the hinges and the knees. You see that? It's pretty crazy looking. So then I added the culture on sawdust to the fire ant farm. They drilled around for a little bit, and it completely mummified the fire ants in 4 to 6 days. Yay, you can cheer for the fungus. That's all right. You could be I'm a cheerleader. Right? So we have these ants now, this target specific for carpenter ants and fire ants, and I haven't been able to mummify anything else. This fungus was sitting in a little isolated canyon for a long time. It's never seen a fire ant. Right? It matched up. Somehow it matched the armor of this black carpenter ant, the signature, and it devoured it. How many of you could use some fire ant killer at your house? Do you have fire ants up here? I brought some for you. I'll just let them loose out back. I've been breeding cold-tolerant fire ants too. No. This is the way a fire ant should look. It's its new Wikipedia glamour shot. But I love it now. So,
Fashion show.
yeah, it's all dressed up. But you see the green part? That's the mold. It's reverting back once it's mummified. So Olga and I had the fire ants on our property, 8 acres, right? And we did 1 dose several years ago, right? 4 or 5 years ago. And we have not had 1 fire ant mound come back with 1 single dose. Wow. Thank you.
Do you sell this stuff?
What a find. Come on.
You need an investor.
I take cash. Now, but let's go back to, how did I find it? It was a total accident. I was photographing something else. It was my first time. I'll never forget my first. And now I am fixated on these things because I see the value. And you see the value as an investor. He sees value. So now we've been testing these, and this is the year we get to do our EPA experimental use permit, right? And we're going to do it on our own, right? It's exciting, and if this works for ants, look at all the other fungi out there that might be target specific for a problematic pest. That's what I'm getting at. All right, you could call it disruptive technology, and I've always been a troublemaker, right, Vaughn? One of my best friends just came to see me, so haven't seen him in a while. Grew up as a troublemaker. I will remain a troublemaker.
Good for you.
Good for me. I mean, what fun is following the leader, right? You can wag the dog every now and then. But here's the problem, is that the pesticides they work for a little while, right? It kills the mound, they make a new one. They kills the mound, make a new one, all right? The problem is, this is acephate, this is, what is it called? Orthene. You know that nasty smelling powder you put on. This is right from the EPA. You can look it up, the toxicity. Amphibians, behavior growth, mortality. Crustaceans, mortality. Fish, mortality. Biochemistry changes, enzymes, mortality, reproduction. Terrestrial plant, zooplankton. Look at all these things that one product does to the food chain, right? And it kills just about everything. You could almost say that. But this, we have a very narrow window here with some, even species within these clades. You see? So these are more like a laser guided, taking them out. I'm trying to get this to the market because I know that that one product can replace all those pesticides that you see when you walk into a Home Depot or Lowe's, right? They're extremely toxic to use and handle, even for a homeowner. Pets, children. I'm lucky that Heidi gets to run around our organic farm with her bare shoes off and no fire ant. She didn't even know, she got bit by a fire ant like at a conference, and she didn't even know what it was. She's 3 years old. She just was confused. You know? 7.5 billion pounds of one product that goes into just fire ant killers in the US every year. That's
licensed to carry?
License to carry? I carry.
Probably a real good thing.
Sure. The range is spreading. It's an estimated $5 to $6 billion in damages a year just from fire ants. And it's not going away. You know, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but they're making a lot of money on fire ant killers, right? That need to be reapplied all the time. One dose, I haven't had a fire ant in 4 to 5 years.
Well,
Just saying.
He's making a joke about it, but did he become a target?
Sure.
Did he get to make money?
That's okay. We're all together. You'll protect me. Will you protect me? There's also invasive plants. Let's talk about this, right? Let's talk about the elephant in the room. There's endophytes in all the plants. Do you remember? This has beneficial endophytes. Why are these plants so aggressive? Because they have beneficial fungi too in their leaves and on their roots that makes them that strong. Well, if we find a fungus, if we find kudzu with a leaf spot or a lesion, that's a parasite of the kudzu. Be on the lookout for stuff. I'm doing it with poison ivy on my farm and in my driveway. I've been, with my little hole puncher, remember? Punching little leaves of fungi that are specifically attacking poison ivy. So I can put it in my tank sprayer and just spray it with a natural fungus that is a mycoherbicide now. It's just fascinating. Now you know why I don't sleep anymore, is because stuff is, it's too interesting to stay awake. You know, just damn, I don't want to sleep. Or I just tell myself right before I go to sleep, I'm going to dream about this aspect. And then wake up with some solutions. Yep.
On the other hand, what niche do you see fire ants filling?
Exactly. So that's the ethical question. It was now that they've filled the niche, they've also been known to pollinate some plants. You're taking them out of a system, so there would be a black hole now in that web. So there's the conundrum of interfering with what's been going on. So ethically, we have to look at all of the components, the groundwater contamination, the non-specificity of killing everything else. I'm willing to get rid of fire ants and leave a small black hole for a little while, and it'll weld itself back together. Does anybody want that vote?
Why do you think they moved in here from South England?
They had no way to get here. They were brought over on plants, and once it was the right conditions, they're much more aggressive, and they don't have anything to really stop them. In fact, there's more aggressive ants that just hit Florida and Texas called crazy ants, and there's a new one, and they eat circuit boards. They're going to make fire ants look like butterflies. You know, we're going to appreciate the fire ants. But they're crazy, right? But kudzu is interesting. You can grow mushrooms on kudzu, that's what I'm getting at. You can make lemonade out of lemons if you want. Yep.
A bunch of us use this fire ant program that is a specific birth control hormone for fire ant queen. It doesn't kill the workers, it just makes them sterile and the mouths die. You got an opinion of that?
I don't know the product. And, anything that's a hormone kind of worries me. The fungus being a mechanical, more of a cuticle recognition, seems to be the safest.
This is supposed to be specific
Yeah.
to fire ant.
Okay, that sounds better. Much, much better. I like that idea.
Well, it works.
Yeah,
Works,
okay.
right?
Works good. Kudzu. Spreads like crazy. We all know kudzu, don't we? Do y'all have kudzu here? Spreads around like wildfire, doesn't it? Chokes out all the competitors, you know. We don't stand a chance. Well, you got to pick on the big one. So a couple years ago, my mentor at Clemson, Dr. Walker Miller, he owns the Happy Berry Farm in the upstate South Carolina. They genetically map the peach tree. They can do a lot of things. He's amazing. And he's really the one that told me to go back to school because I stopped for a while. And he came to my farm and said, Trad, my new farm, and said, there's some research going on in New Zealand. I have Botchоспhaeria. It's a problem with muscadines and grapes. It's a leaf pathogen. It's a pathogen. And I can't get rid of it without using systemic fungicides. So it goes into the fruit. That's what we'd be eating, right? So I went out to his orchard and I clipped a bunch of his vines. I ground them up in a blender and I streaked them onto a Petri plate like this. And out comes a bunch of cultures. And I found a couple green ones. That's trichoderma. And that's a mycoparasite. All right, so we put that, have you ever grown mushrooms on little plugs, little shiitake plugs? That's what I sell too. But I grew that fungus on matchsticks, tiny, tiny little like toothpick matchsticks. He drilled the holes into the vines, up high and down low. So it wouldn't hurt the plant, just a tiny little hole. And he put the matchsticks in with that fungus that I isolated from his vines. It created a phytochemical response, like a vaccine. And it wiped out all the Botchоспhaeria on his farm in one season. So I went back the following year because I needed more of the pathogen. And I said, Dr. Miller, can I come to your farm and get some cuttings for that pathogen? He's like, you're going to have to go somewhere else because it's gone. He was beaming. Target specific, patient specific, plant specific. Fungi are here, they're battling it out. It's like biological warfare. We just have to watch it, you know? And now we get into, well, those fungi are already there. Those are the endophytes that we don't see, okay? So they exist in the plant. Now this is interesting, all right? Now this may be the future of protecting our plants. We can now take a fungus, what did you say, squash bug? Stink bug. So we can soak our seeds, like tomatoes or squash, in this powder of spores. The spores drill their way into the plant tissue, and then it grows with the plant, even up into the tomatoes, the fruit, and because it wants to end up into the seeds to make it to the next generation. All right, so then if you seed save, guess what you have in the seeds? You have the fungus again. It arrives. It's a delivery platform. Imagine if we had a squash seed that was naturally would attack and mummify squash bugs or vine borers. That's coming. Right? Is that a patentable process? Yes. So I now, I just turned 44, and I'm a minimalist now. Maybe not when I was young. But I don't ask for much around the holidays, for my birthday. Have any of you ever bought yourself a birthday present? Come on, raise your hand. It was exactly what you wanted, wasn't it? All right. So this year, right around January 16th, but right before January, I started looking at things because we have a new lab, class 2. We can buy different organisms now, safety organisms. So I opened up my book of organisms that you get from these centers, and I ordered E. coli. I ordered salmonella. I ordered strep. Pyogenes. I ordered strep pneumoniae. And I ordered candida. And I ordered pseudomonas. I ordered the combo plate of pathogens. Happy birthday to me. And Olga didn't know this until it arrived. And she goes, "What are you doing?" Right? Troublemaker, I'm telling you. So all my pathogens come in the mail. I'm like culturing these out. This is a staph that and also staph aureus. So staph is all in all our bodies, and it's easy to culture. If you do a nasal swab, it's sitting up in there, but it protects you too. We have covered with microbes. We're outnumbered inside and out of our bodies like a coral reef. I am not trad anymore. I'm something else. I'm a collection of organisms, but I'm outnumbered, okay? So we need that biodiversity. When we disrupt that, then it's like the trees. See what's happening? Your diet, the drugs you take, the antibiotics, it's all disruptive to our ecosystems. So I've been culturing these bacteria, and we've found a way, all right, just by pure observation, inside one of my bags, okay, I made a little swimming pool. This is sterile sawdust and a culture. And I can take a biopsy now, or a swab. How many of you have ever had strep throat? Just a couple, huh? Or are you just shy? So they take a throat culture, right? I put it in a selective solution, and then I can inject it. This is E. coli, actually, for this one. It goes into the bag, sits on top of my cake that I made. It's a sterile culture. It's a cake of fungus. It's a pure culture. It's a zoo animal. It hasn't seen any danger. Right? And I put the E. coli in there, and within 24 hours, it sweats. Isn't that how we started the conversation? Mushrooms make heat, carbon dioxide, and they sweat. They sweat chemical keys to help break down their food source. They sweat antibiotics to surface sterilize their way through the mulch. It's not sterile out there. How do they do it? They produce their own weapons, their own antibiotics, and they swim through that based on what they touch and what they encounter. It's like a factory. It's like an assembly line. Follow me now? On demand. All right, they have those keys. They're like locksmiths, really. So 24 hours, these are the controls. I've now sweat out a target-specific metabolite. This is a metabolite, that's what we call it, exclusively for the trigger, which was what? E. coli. All right, there it is, E. coli. This is a big mushroom that grows up here. It's a conch. It's a really hard mushroom. You wouldn't want to eat it. Most of us ignore it. Not me. I don't ignore anything anymore. Nope. I'm collecting everything. So now we take mushrooms that we eat, like maitake and shiitake and oyster mushrooms. Those sound familiar? And they're doing the same thing. They're sweating out solutions based on what I trigger them with. They get territorial and they're like, no, this is my block. They sweat out all that metabolite. What's interesting is I put that metabolite back into my Petri plates, and I could not grow that E. coli for 3 months. All right. What I'm getting at too is that our antibiotics, it takes FDA takes about 12 and a half to 15 years to develop a new antibiotic. Okay. It takes 2 years for the bacteria to become drug resistant to what took us 12 and a half to 15 years. That's what we're dealing with now in 2017 moving forward, is drug resistance. That's the challenge. It'll be a little scary, but that's my way around it, is if we can collect fungi and pathogens and create a target-specific, patient-specific. Imagine that. The future of a hospital or a healing center could be you walk in, they take a swab, they inject it, or the robot injects it into a vial, and 24 hours later, like a vending machine, you come back and pick up your name on it, your target-specific antibiotic. Different from yours, different from hers, reducing the chance of drug resistance. This is what we're doing in our lab right now. Probably the most top secret of anything we're doing is that research. All right? Time to get a bodyguard, right? So, mycoforestation. We need to protect the trees. We need to make soil. Mushrooms are decomposers, remember? But they're composers of so much more. You know, I think decomposer is somewhat of a down term. You're just a decomposer. That's what I heard. I will also tell you, in my book, I have a chapter in here on page 150, Fungi in the Classroom. This was a guide to growing mushrooms. I thought it was important that kindergarten through postdoc should learn a little bit more about fungi, because the teachers would come to my tour and they would be like, where is all this information in the textbook? We don't have it. And I said, I've had to compile that for the teachers. They were asking for it. All right? Disturbing news. Newsflash. The American National Teaching Standards, you can look at this online. She's shaking her head. At 4th grade and 5th grade, it is under biology, the lesson plans under biology, it is quote, with a finger pointing at you, quote, it is to be understood that soil is non-living. Frightening, huh? I couldn't make that up. When I saw it, I said, this must be I must be seeing things. Right? The upstate South Carolina, where I live, the Trees of Greenville did the study this couple years ago. Our topsoil was 12 to 15 feet deep in 1910. They went back and did the study at the same exact locations. How deep was it? 5 to 8 inches. We need to make soil, folks. There's a reason that civilizations rise and decline. It's their ability to hold water and moisture and plants and trees. Okay, we will become a desert. Starting to feel like that, isn't it? A couple years ago? All right. You can take spore prints. Mushrooms produce spores. You can put these mushrooms like this down that you find on glass or on mirrors. I know it looks a little suspicious, but that's how you harvest them. I had to explain this slide to my mom. Who has a bird feeder? You like your birds? All right, so let's do this. Let's do an experiment. You find some mushrooms, some mushrooms in the yard, you ID them, and then you take spore prints, you scrape up all those spores, and you mix them in with your bird seed. You know, you probably got a glass of wine right there. Because this takes one. You mix in the spores with your bird seed, all right? You fill up your bird feeders. Sit back in your chair and just watch. What have we done? We have now recruited. Our Earth Army is coming in. You can do this with corn, deer corn, turkey, wild animals. What goes in must come out. All right? I am weaponizing the wildlife. Thank you. Thank you. All right. This will be my first executive order as President of the United States. 2020. Under the mushroom party. You got my vote? I'll take over right now if you want. Olga, pack your stuff. The house will look different. So why not? Why not? That's what I'm saying. Spores are very hard, chitinized little packets of DNA that can survive space entry and bird and animal guts. They can survive that, and what goes in comes out. So now you've just using your wildlife to spread spores everywhere. I like to think about this. This is what I dream about. Is this mycotopian civilization, you know? Here comes, if you're making an army, here comes your fighter jets. Here are your F-16s coming in to pick up their payload, to go on a bombing run on a logged area around you. Spores. Hits a stump. Germinates. See? Recycles. So here's your F-16s. Here comes your stealth bombers. Right? I think it's just a poetic, natural, romantic idea that, hey, let's partner up with nature. Let's have a little fun. All right? Let's weaponize the birds.
Sir, would you comment your point of view on weaponizing commercial feed, for example? We happen to be feeding organic to domestic poultry.
Uh-huh.
Would the technique that you would apply there be the one that you just outlined?
Yeah, you can, if you sporulate your feed, it will end up in the manure. You could put in species that are designed for the manure. You can put in a species that are designed to attack and kill fecal coliforms. You see? The fungus is there, right? To keep those coliforms from getting into the watershed in your creeks. Now we're starting at a whole nother level. You could even feed livestock spent growing substrate from a mushroom farm. If you have a mushroom farm around you, or if you're growing oyster mushrooms like this, whatever's left over at the end of 12 weeks, you can feed it to your goats, you can pelletize it, you can feed it to tilapia. We've pelletized it, and this is weird. This is getting weird. This is a 2-beer idea, okay? So don't judge me. One wasn't enough. After cracked the second one, we made kitty litter out of spent, you ever seen recycled kitty litter out of newspaper and pine and things like that? We took our substrate out of our farm and sent it to a pelletizer. He pelletized it. And it's perfect for kitty litter. So our intent was that, you know, the cat goes in there. We don't have a kitty litter box anymore, but I know people do. And the kitty litter goes in. The mushroom mycelium can stay alive for up to a year without one drop of water. So you could scoop that out, put it into a bucket, add a little water, and the mycelium just wakes up and it completely mummifies all the urine and the cat poop in there, right? And it fills a bucket. And the craziest thing about this is if you crack the lid and it mummifies, mushrooms will fruit out of that cat litter. Now, that's where I draw the line. I can't explain that at the market, you know. There's nothing you could say. So how do you grow your mushrooms? Just take them. And they will be completely edible. That's interesting. They don't translocate that to the fruiting bodies. But what I was going after was the Toxoplasma gondii, the parasite that's in cat litter. You see? I'm trying to figure out what can we do to put things together for those solutions. Right? This is what we need. It takes 600 to 800 years to make 1 inch of soil in a healthy forest. If we stopped everything in South Carolina to lose that 12 feet, it would take 79,000 years to put it back. What we lost in 100. Okay, so we all kind of have to do our part. Make soil, invite wood chips. I know they have wood chip piles everywhere. Tell them to come to your property. Repair this. This does not heal. You see this all the time driving around, don't you? But I think our logging companies, I don't want to say to blame, but they can be part of the solution is all I'm saying. I think they need to chip up the waste so the mushrooms can eat it and repair that soil quicker. All right? We need them to do that. This is what we want to walk into, right? That's the forest I want Heidi to walk in, collecting mushrooms. She's 3 years old and she's identifying morels and amanitas and chanterelles. That's our future, right? That's why we need that chapter in those 3rd and 4th grade classes. All right, we need to open our eyes a little bit to the kingdom. Yeah.
Does it matter what kind of spores you put into, the bird feeder? Could you, I don't recognize mushrooms.
Yeah.
So if I were to go out and just pick a mushroom and put it on the glass and then scrape it up and put it
Yeah.
in, say, the bird feeder, could I do damage by creating, are there mushrooms that will create damage?
Okay, that's a valid point. Invasive species like honey mushrooms are probably not the right choice. There's a lot of mushrooms that are really good. There's very, very few of the 4,000 to 5,000 mushrooms in this area. It's less than 0.1%. But if you want to do that and you see them, I would recommend a field guide. I don't see any field guides over there yet. Oh, you do? There is one? Mushroom identification.
Been trying to identify
Sure.
before you did, okay.
Absolutely, yeah. But on a majority cases, the darker spored ones like you saw are safe for that. The whiter spored are not. But this should be our goal, is to preserve these environments before they go away. You take the trees away, all right? You take the insects that are there. You take the fungus, those cordyceps that are attacking those insects. Could we use those? We could have, right? You see, so we're losing options here. We're losing options. And we need those mushrooms to pop out of the back of the heads of those insects, don't we? All right? Is anybody worried that they might attack people? All right, I just want to show you how fast this works. Everybody, feel the back of your neck. Go ahead, do it. I'm serious. Go down until you feel a bump. Uh-oh. Okay, your homework is to measure that over the next week. I know. I keep pruning mine. And what's really interesting, it really is, it just keeps getting better. The fungi are there. We just have to observe them, and those plates, right, I put bacteria on one side, the E. coli on one side, and I put a mushroom on the other, and they grow towards each other and just battle it out. And there's sweat all over the plate, and I'm watching it. This is like what I do on Friday nights. I got no cable. I've got like Shroom TV on a plate, just watching it. It's too late for me. But researchers from Yale found this fungus. It's an endophyte, lives in leaves down in the Amazon. Also been found in English ivy. And they found out that it can actually, this is eating pure polyurethane. It has found the ability to shift its enzymes, to express the genes, to find the right key to unlock polyurethane, all right? Potentially being a plastic degrading fungus, right? We need some of that. Give me some of that. I get some weird phone calls, by the way. Not just the morels, but pretty odd ones. From Florida, is trad there? Maybe. That's what I say now. Is trad there? It depends. Explain yourself before I say yes. And I say, I found a mushroom. I live in Florida, and I found a mushroom growing out of a bowling ball. These are the calls I get. Really. Growing in the hole, you left it out in the yard. I get it. Maybe some leaves fell in the holes and it grew out of the leaf. No. It's cracking. It's growing out of the resin of the bowling ball. Now that you know what I know, can we use that? Yeah. Now you see value in that. All right? Because we got to get rid of all the bowling balls. It's a problem. That'll be my second executive order. I know, there's priorities. But they're out there. We just need to find them. We need to observe them. We need to watch them do their work. That's what I do in my lab. That's no joke. That's what I do. And I love it. All right. I don't need a vacation. I love what I do.
What is that?
And it just grows on a Petri plate. I can grow peace. How about that? I can grow it. I can watch it grow. And if we have peace, we got love. And if we have love, we have happiness. Happiness. I'm going to tell you now, I mean, our company, Mushroom Mountain, started out, I mean, Vaughn's known me all my life, just growing mushrooms, that's it. And it has evolved into something truly magical. When they say, you know, do you grow magic mushrooms? I'm like, yeah. All the time. They're all magic. They all have a gift. We just have to find out. And, you know, I started out growing mushrooms in my room over the garage. And when I met Olga, we built a lab inside of a 4x6 walk-in closet. All right. We moved to South Carolina. We built a lab in our back of our house that was 12 by 16. All right. Now we just closed 4 weeks ago on 17 acres and 42,000 square feet of warehouse space. Right? We're putting all of our chips on the kingdom because the kingdom is taking care of us. I think we owe them that. So we are quickly expanding our growing rooms, getting the funds for analytical labs, attracting a dream team of geneticists, microbiologists, entomologists. You see, that's what I want more than anything in this life is to build this campus for us all, because we are a company that makes things that people need, not what they want. That's how I describe us on a tour, and it's true. If you can make it into that tour, you will see all this going on. People make gadgets and toys all day long. I don't want to do that. I want to invent things that are natural pesticides and create soil and protect this little brown, little blue planet until we find another one. All right? So that is it. That is it for me. Thank you for coming.